If you enjoy Draw and Paint What You Regret on YouTube and would like to show your support, you can find Cash App and Venmo information below. By all means, this channel is free to watch and learn from. Enjoy! Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of watercolor pencils demo. So in this demo we left off with the underpainting of our watercolor pencil still life. So as you can see, this is where we left off. You may see some kind of shiny areas. If you're seeing that or looking at that, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the materials that I'm using in this demo. So if you are an advanced watercolor is are an advanced watercolor artist that use watercolor pencils, and if you could care less about this, you could go ahead and just fast forward to the demo. But for my students, there's a few things that I definitely want to talk about when it comes to materials that I'm using in our part 2, which is the glazing color over our underpainting. So I started with the masking fluid. So this masking fluid is Winsor Newton masking fluid. And if you're like, what is masking fluid? Masking fluid is basically used to reserve or preserve the white of the paper. So if you have highlights and or things that you are like, oh, you know, I don't want to color over any of these areas, because we all know with watercolors in general, whether you're using pencils or the paint or just the paints, whether it's dry paints or out of the tubes, we all know that you want to work from light to dark, and you have to preserve your whites because traditionally you don't even get a white in your palette. And so using masking fluid definitely helps me with that process, to where I don't have to worry about, oh, if I want to get a background or a wet background, but I don't want to paint over my highlight, I can go in with masking fluid and block it out, and I don't have to worry about that. So in certain areas, you will see that I put masking fluid in certain areas. When you are using masking fluid, you guys, you don't want to leave it on your paper too long. Some masking fluids will turn your paper white. Will turn your paper yellow. Girl, it's already white. So you just want to make sure that you are just not leaving it on too long, because you just don't want your paper to turn yellow, so your highlight wouldn't look like a highlight anymore. So that is one of the materials that I am using. Another thing is a little bit of a technique. So typically when I am using watercolor pencils, I'm very traditional with just placing the pigment down with my pencils and then activating the pigment with my watercolor brushes. So that's typically how I work, is more of a push and pull between the pencils and also the brushes. So another technique that I noticed, because I have been looking at different techniques from books as well as just from the University of YouTube that we all love, and I realized how versatile these pencils are, because I think they're a medium that people don't really pick up often. And so when I realized that there were a lot of different techniques, there is one that stood out for me, and the one that stood out for me was, and give me a second to get my little example, but the one, and it's still wet, the one that stood out for me is actually applying pigment to a scrap sheet of paper, almost like a palette, right? And then you take your brush and you dip your brush in water. So when you dip your brush in water, and I can do a little bit, and you activate the pigment, onto the sheet. What this is doing is your brush is picking up the pigment, and I wanted to have some watercolor that was diluted in water and have a lot of it, so I was able to transfer that pigment to my palette. So what I did with this, I used a just an eyedropper. I think this is too big for an eyedropper, but I used one of these, and I just picked up water out of my container and, you know, just poured it back into my palette, just dripped it back into my palette. And I was able to activate and use that paint and have a lot of it. And the reason why I wanted to do this, because in my background, I wanted to get a more wet into wet kind of ideal in my background or look. And what I mean by this is my background is a warm gray. If you look at the, hopefully I insert the image, but if you look at the image, it's pretty much, I have a warm light, so that turns my background to more of a warm gray. And with that being said, I was like, okay, how am I gonna kind of get this effect? And typically I don't really use my gray background. I would change the colors up, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep it simple, kind of stay true to my image. That way, if somebody is following along, they kind of have an idea of how to at least get the actual painting down close to the image that they're seeing. Although I am working from life, some of my students may be watching this and they don't have the setup in front of them. They only have the image to work from. So that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of sticking true to this kind of yellowish gray, this warm gray background. So with that background, I was thinking, okay, I think the best approach is doing a kind of wet into wet background, which is a little bit more abstract, but it'll give me the idea that I want, and I can push and pull that with my pencils when I get there. So when it comes to some new supplies, I just wanted to quickly, before I get started, talk about some of these supplies. So another thing is a rubber cement pickup. So when I am done with my background, my table ground, I'm going to use this to pick up my masking fluid, because it just pretty much just scrapes it all up and I don't have to worry about it. It doesn't affect or agitate my paper, and I'm good to go. So I'm definitely going to use this rubber cement for that. So that is another materials that my student probably don't have or haven't heard of, or they just don't know. From my understanding with masking fluid, I've seen people just use their hands and rub off the masking fluid. I honestly don't like doing that because I know I have a lot of oils in my hands, or I may have on lotion, so on and so forth. So I just choose not to do it. But I've seen people do it and it works. So I think that's it with my materials and what I am using. So once again, I'm going to get in my background in my table ground with a wet into wet. I'm going to glaze over the local colors of all my object, and that is going to pretty much be the demo for the glazing method. So the glazing method is not the finished product. There's going to be a part 3 where I'm finishing up the actual demo with my pencils and also my brushes, and we are almost done with this session, so I'm pretty excited. So you guys, I'm going to get quiet because I am 9 minutes in, and every time I do an intro, I'm like, I should not be talking this long, but I am. So I'm going to get quiet and get started on the demo. So I'll see you guys in the next clip. Hey everyone, just really quick, I just wanted to pop in and let you know that I am coming in with nothing but clean water, and I'm activating the paper in the background. So if you're seeing me do this, that's pretty much what I'm doing. And what this does, it just wets the paper, activates the sizing on the paper. And then I'm going to come in with a quick wash. So I have my 2 different types of colors of pigment. I'm going to drop it into this wet area, and I'm going to allow it to just blend and mix together and let the water do its thing. So I'm doing this for my background For the actual table ground, I did not come in and wet it. I actually just went in with the paint, and I kind of regret it because it didn't blend as well as the background, so I probably should have came in and just activate the bottom of the paper. But other than that, I wanted to pop in just really quick, just in case you're like, girl, what are you painting? It has no paint on your brush, it's just water. That's pretty much what I was doing. I was doing a wet into wet background and a wet into wet table ground. But other than that, just wanted to pop in really quick and just say that continue watching the demo, and I hope you enjoy it. Bye.